Session 9, 9 out of 10. Boy, it only seemed like yesterday that I first met you, all confused and full of anger and carrying guns and things of that nature. And now everybody has mellowed down some. Good. Uh, we're going to continue where we left off from last time. Uh, I've tried to save this male-female relationship, human relationships, love, things of that, toward the last part of these workshops so that you could bring to the subject maximum insight. Because as we have mentioned over and over again, and I continue to mention over and over again, that this is the crux, this is the crucial part, okay? Our relationships with other human beings constitutes the foundation of the whole experience of happiness on this planet. And therefore, it requires maximum insight, maximum intelligence in order to successfully enter into these relationships and don't get damaged. Because remember, if you don't know how to manage these relationships appropriately, you will manage them inappropriately. And just like your anger, okay? And the inappropriate management of these relationships will always result in misery with no exception whatsoever. So I wanted you to really have as much background information, particularly on anger, because anger is one of the most destructive components in relationships. We find over and over again that most relationships collapse because of the conflict between the clash of these expectations and the anger that results from that. Remember, whenever anyone fails to meet your expectation, you get angry. Okay? And then if that anger is not managed appropriately, it will be managed inappropriately. The net result will be the destruction of that relationship, and therefore the ground out of which you can really have a experience of happiness with another human being. Fundamentally, if we are interacting with other human beings and we're not experiencing some happiness, then we're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong. And the whole task is to bring ourselves into ma'at, to bring ourselves into alignment. And that requires work, homework, housework, call it what you like. You have to do the work. I have to repeat that every workshop because I know how our minds are. You see, we leave here full of enthusiasm, say, I'm going to go do that homework, and then by the end of the day, priorities creep up, something else happens, and then invariably you wind up not doing any homework. So I know this tendency in the mind, so I have to remind you again and again and again and again to do the homework. The reason we got into this mess is because we did not do homework. So the only way out is that you have to do the homework. I know it's tedious, I know it's boring, I know very often it causes you to reach into dimensions of your being that you haven't explored since you've been alive. And quite frankly, you don't know the way into the interiority of your own psychology. So very often there's a hesitancy to do it because of the difficulty of it. But I must remind you again and again, you have to do the homework. Because there is no other way to know yourself. You have to study yourself. I can't tell you who you are. No one can. It is a thing that you have to discover on your own. So let me move on. I had asked that one of the homeworks, most essential homeworks that you do is to compile these lists of expectations and contribution. I'm sure a lot of you had a lot of trouble finding what kind of contribution you can make to another human being. You've been living so long on the useless side of life, right? That for the life of you, you can't figure out. You know what you want from another human being, but you never really have paused and thought, what is it that I can contribute? You see. So I know that there may be some difficulties there. But in spite of that, I am requesting that you proceed and break through that barrier. Now, it's really very interesting because these expectations, and some of them are great, aren't they? Great expectations. I think there was a book, a novel to that title. Dickens, Great Expectations. So we all have these great expectations that we bring to every relationship. In fact, if we really knew, while standing before that justice of peace, the secret list of expectations the other party has tucked away in their little minds, none of us would have ever gotten in. None of us would enter into a relationship at all, because no one would buy into that. But we all have these little lists, and they come out, so to speak, in the wash, don't they? After we are together for 6 months, about 6 months, you can no longer suppress your needs and expectations in that relationship. And very often you shock to discover that that person wasn't even to read your mind and just click in and follow suit. And so therein lies the genesis and the beginning of the conflict in this relationship. So it is these lists of expectations that we all have carried around with us. And the thing to remember most about the list of expectations is that these things very often serve as the foundation of your attitudes, your values, your beliefs, the models, the rules that you bring to a relationship. My husband should behave such and such a way, or my wife should behave such and such a way. All of these rules, these shoulds, all these rules are always expressed in the form of shoulds. These are your rules. These are the seeds of your expectations. And so they sort of create in your own mind a kind of alternate reality that you then make every attempt that you're capable of in editing that individual to fit into this rule list that you formulated when you were 6 years old somewhere. Okay? So all of this kind of work has to be done. So with no further ado, let us explore the homework. The lists of expectations and the lists of contribution. How many were able to look at their list of expectations? Good. What were some of the things you discovered as you looked at that list of expectations? Who would like to volunteer, huh? Don't volunteer anything too personal, but I want to process it. Because remember, the whole key to this stuff is processing. If you do homework and you don't process it, it is tantamount to planting a crop and you do not harvest it. It is pointless. We want to process the stuff so that we can squeeze every single ounce of insight out of it.
Well, I got a question.
Sure.
I don't know how to go past the mundane things that you could do for another person. I mean, if you're in a relationship, a husband and wife, you know, you got pretty much preconceived roles. And I don't know how to go beyond that to what could you give to someone that really attributes to the quality of their life or to that person. What could you give to that person? Those kind of things, I don't know. What can you give someone?
How many other people who attempted the homework and constructing a list of contribution experienced that same problem, that same dilemma? Same thing, trying to figure out what you really have that you really can, in fact, contribute to a person that is not simply mundane, that will have some benefit to that individual. Anyone else have that problem?
Yes, I just, once you said it, I just started jotting.
You just start doing your homework. Okay.
But
good. You wasn't here, Keeper. You
right.
You
So I under contributions, my first thing was love, support, and assistance, understanding. I think my contributions would be that which is going to help that person be the best person that he could possibly be, because that would be what I would expect from him. So I didn't even deal with them. I don't consider those mundane.
Right.
So I didn't even think in terms of those things. I was thinking in terms of the ultimate goal being the best that you can be, the best person that you can be, having a very good spiritual foundation, because that would be at the top of the list of my expectations from a brother.
Okay.
That he would be about spiritual development, and in turn help me
Also help
out. So it would be a reciprocal
type of relationship. All right. Well, certainly Keeper has opened up the can of worms that really leads us into a kind of categorical structuring of the areas in which we can make contributions. You remember we said that you can make contribution at several levels. You remember we talked about it at the mundane or physical level, right? We talked about contributions at the psycho-mental level, the emotional level, the spiritual level, etc. You remember that. So it depends on how far you are developed in your own human beingness. That dictates what level you can contribute. For instance, if you have not developed beyond the mundane level, then it's unlikely that you can contribute anything beyond the mundane level. If you have not yourself grown to that part of your being that houses your mental and emotional gifts and qualities, then it's very unlikely that you can give that. If you certainly have not attained a state of love yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to contribute love to a relationship, however much you try. So, and of course, as people pointed out, this spiritual level, of course, is by definition the greatest contribution that you can make to another human being, bar none. But if we ourselves have not grown to the level, then of course we can't really do that. We will have good intentions, no doubt about it. We will make efforts, but it will still be just that, a good intention and an effort. But let's back up, because Emma's question is even more profound than the few remarks that I've made thus far, and so I want to address it again. I want to remind you that at one of these satsangs, the first session, we talked about this thing called Dharma. How many remember that? We talked about Dharma in satsang. And how did we define Dharma? We define Dharma as the discovery of your purpose in life. Remember? Right? Dharma is the discovery of your purpose in life, your gift, your talent, that unique thing that you have been endowed with, that does not exist in any other human being on the planet. You are the only source of that. And it is that you contribute to other human beings. You see, if you want to reach the top shelf. But in order to contribute at that level, again, one has to have gotten into Dharma, right? And that's a whole nother subject. But the point is that we very often have difficulty and making and even thinking of how to contribute to other person, because it requires a complete shift in our gestalt. For our whole life, we've only been thinking from the useless side. What can I get from this relationship? Or we simply try to make on our list of contributions, we try to really simply shift over onto this list what was on our list of expectation, with the assumption that the person wants the same things you want. That is a tremendous assumption, isn't it? It is a tremendous leap. This is your list of expectations. You want this, you want this, you want this, you want this. And you can't conceive of nobody not wanting that. But the reality may be that this is not what this other person wants nor needs, for that matter. So it almost requires you to completely take any focus off yourself and to fix that focus really on that person, almost to meditate on that person. You really have to look, you see, and to see if you have anything that you can really give.
Well, first of all, people are not always honest. And I would say what a person wants at 40 is not the same thing they wanted at 20, okay? The
Very good.
dynamics have changed totally.
Very good.
And most people have been scarred. They've been through a little something. And when you meet people, they're cautious, especially about their innermost feelings. And you can't always guess on what a person wants. They have to have enough trust to convey it. And if these people have been burned in other relationships, of course, they're going to be reluctant. So
Now,
what do you do?
Pause
You could,
for 1 minute.
Uh-huh.
What would you contribute to a person who has lost the capacity to open up and trust another human being? What would you want to give that person whom you have discovered that to be the case about? What
Say it
could-
again.
If you are in a relationship with a person that has been so abused, so mistreated or whatever, that they have shut down, withdrawn, they don't want to open up, they have retreated, what can you contribute to that individual that will meet that situation?
I don't really know.
Sadranos. So
Okay.
let's
I
turn-
don't really know what
All
I
right.
could give.
All right.
Security.
Huh? Right.
Security.
But how do you give security?
How do you
just
give
let
it?
that person know that you're there.
Being
And that you would support and be with that person.
Yeah. You see the thing? You see what he said? What he said, if that is the person's situation, it's almost like if a person is hungry, what do
Yeah.
you give them?
That's easy,
That's
but
the
this
same
is more
thing.
abstract.
It's a little bit more abstract. But if the person's need is that for someone, right, to accept them, if they need somebody that they can trust, then that means that they have to find a person that is not going to condemn them, not going to criticize them, going to provide them with security and all those other things. I'm sure, Seth, right, we can generate a whole list of things that you would need to provide for that person to draw them out of their isolation. Right? Yes, Sandra.
Most of the things that I came up with were these abstract things like faithfulness, loyalty, sincerity, that kind of abstract.
Non-mundane. And that's the reason, because believe me, what we need most is not food, clothing, and shelter. Now this is interesting. There's a hierarchy of human needs, aren't there? But it's a hierarchy. What we need, according to this hierarchy, more critically than anything, is the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological, and the mental. It's a descending order. Most people have some food to eat. Okay, they may not have the kind of food they want, etc., etc. But we all need, and you could just look at yourself. Do you need somebody to give you food? Not really. You need this stuff that you all are talking about. You need this higher thing. If that is true of you, then it's not such a completely to assume that, well, maybe other people need these kind of things too. But he may not, you may be able to trust. You see, that's not this person's ability. They can't trust. So you have to start contributing something somewhere else. You're right, Senra. Very often it's from this non-physical level. When we talk about love and things of that nature, we're not talking about a activity that is simply relegated to the mundane level. But you have to begin to look at it. What kind of higher contribution can we make in these relationships? Yes, sir.
I know, the last session, I wasn't here, but I watched the film 3-4 times, as a matter of fact. And one of the things in which that I found the most difficulty in was to become defocused off of myself and to get into the dynamics of my wife as to what I could contribute. Mm-hmm. And it took me a very long time, because everything in which that I came up with, really it was all under the banner of love. Mm-hmm. Just full out, but I know that it took me a long time because of my ego got out the way and got in the way, and I was saying that one of the things in which that I need to take a look at is those things in which that I failed as a human being to achieve. Mm-hmm. That would be something in which that she would be delighted in. In terms of my shortcomings. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether or not this sounds selfish, but that's the way in which that I tackle the situation. Mm-hmm. And I came up with a list in terms of, I guess people are calling mundane, simple things, right? But listening was on top of it.
Listening?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Listening.
Just listening to the woman.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can become a good listener without the need to be a savior.
Okay.
You know, to understand all the time.
Between husband and savior then.
Yeah, right, right. You know, because I know at times there's a need for me to make her feel comfortable.
Yes.
It's a need for me to understand her. And all the time in which that I'm feeling that there's a need, maybe it may not be the case.
Yes, yes. There certainly is a revelation when you pause for a moment and step outside of our own ego-centered, useless side in a relationship to really see. And sometimes for the first time we see the other person. And so there's a combination of things. As Emma said before, this is a constantly changing. It's a dynamic phenomenon. You know, the wife you married 20 years ago don't even exist. Gone. you see. And the thing is how to deal with the person that is here in this moment. And I'm not going to try to minimize this whole project by suggesting to you that this is something easy to do. This is not easy to do. Okay? I mean, it's really not easy to do. It will require your maximum intelligence. It requires maximum concentration. It really, really does. But the benefits are immeasurable. So we have to begin to look at these things. And that's just the first level. We have not even begun to explore some of the other areas that you will invariably experience these conflicts, you see. We have not talked about sexuality in relationships, very important. So much of the conflicts in relationships centers simply around sexuality. We recall at one of the prior sessions when we were making a list of the men's complaints and things of that nature and women complaints, and one of the things that come out was that a lot of the brothers were saying that, well, these women don't respect us. They don't respect us. But you have to understand that one of the realities is that if you have mismanaged your sexual activity in a relationship, what the consequences are is the loss of the other partner's respect. It's very deep. And men have a hard time understanding this. You were talking, for instance, a moment ago of the savior. Most men, of course, play the savior role in a relationship, right? They're their wife's guru, right? Right? And your wife is your disciple. Fundamentally, that's the feeling. It's the genuine feeling. I'm the guru, you are the disciple wife, and your whole task is to follow my doctrines, my dogmas, my teachings. You see? You feel like Savior, like Lord. That is the manifestation of that male ego. Women experience it. You know, they're truthful with you, or can dare to be truthful with us. In any case, in this Savior role, on the one hand, you're playing Savior, and then by 10 o'clock at night, you are begging her to perform some of the most bizarre feats known to mankind. And this is a contradiction. On the one hand, you want her to respect you like a guru. And then on the other hand, you telling her, hurry up, baby, go to bed, watch a bird. You see, you drop from your guru level to the level of a beast. And the woman cannot respect it because of the dichotomy, of the contradiction. She's experiencing the beast in you, just begging her like a dog. Literally. Now, after you get through begging like a dog, right, strictly to exploit this woman, right, has nothing to do with romance, you see, sometimes that's a complaint. Well, can't we make it romantic at least? No time for that, you see, right? Let's hit it, let's get this done. So she's having the experience of being reduced to an object to satisfy your sexual appetites, low sexual appetites, not high sexual, low stuff. This is not with flower romance and candlelight dinners anymore. This is just, you got 5 minutes, let's get in here. You see, no caressing, no nothing. You can't really call it lovemaking, technically. In any event, you drop from your guru dome down into your beasthood, and she sees this. And now it's difficult for her to respect. And you go on philosophizing about your dogma, your doctrines. You should be like this, we should tell this, we should tell truth. Nonsense. The woman sees this as you're a beast. And she's experienced that. And now it becomes difficult to respect. So even within a marriage, how we behave sexually goes to the level of respect that flow between the two people. And women know vice versa. When we have a woman, right, that sinks down and do things, then something in us don't respect that woman. You know? So very often we lose respect for her as well because of her dropping to the level of a beast. And whenever you can't manage your sexuality appropriately, you will manage it inappropriately every time, which means you will drop to the level of a beast. Now remember, the problem is not sexuality. Like anger, sexuality is a legitimate drive in human nature. Nothing wrong with that. It is the mismanagement of one's sexual needs that results in all of these conflicts. So we have sex. That's a whole nother subject. Profound. You have money. Sex, money. And the failure to live up to these lists of expectation is what is destroying all these relationships. And so these are the three areas that we have to work on as we come into human relationships. Sex, money, and the expectations associated. If we don't manage it correctly, we're not going to get any satisfaction out of that relationship. It's going to be a hell. Trust me on that. So we, perhaps in the future, will have the occasions to go into these things. We've not talked very much about these things because they require quite a bit of background so that you don't take it out of context. I'm not talking about any kind of pornographic thing. I'm talking about just sex, what the mystics have called what we sometimes call lust. Mismanaged sexual drive is what lust is. That's all lust is. It's the mismanagement of sexuality. And it will destroy. Yes, sir.
In reviewing that tape from last week, one of the things that was that I was shocked not to hear. No one mentioned sensuality in terms of their womanness or maleness, in terms of what they want their partner to be. And I was surprised.
We only got as close as the physical appearance of that person, but it was contained in that. You have a certain concept too that surrounds this whole sensuality thing. You really do. That's why I said it's very, very important that we go into these things very, 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 very deeply. Very, very deeply. Some couple, their problem is sexual, but it's suppressed. Very often even repressed. And like repressed anything or suppressed anything, it gets displaced. So now they're fighting over what show to go to. It's not even about the show. The sex is bad. The sex is degrading in the relationship. Each of them, in order to meet their sexual needs, has to go through a stage of degradation. And they're angry about that. You see? Now, this is the conflict. What do? I need the sex, but the woman will degrade me. Ooh. I find another woman. But then I got another problem. Oh, now I'm violating my own. You see, they're in a dilemma. It's real. We have to learn how to do that. That is one of the tasks of life. It is part of sadhana. And we have to look at that. And as I said before, perhaps as time go on or in the future workshops, if you all are interested, we can go deep into that because that's very, very, very important. But before we go too far off on the tangents, let us come back again to this whole concept of contribution inside of relationships.
I got another question.
Good.
Now, last week you were saying that when you were talking about useless people, how you attract to each other.
Yes.
And now for the homework, part of that was to determine what you could give to another person. Well, what you could give to a person is what you assume they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so you also said that you love someone out of an abundance of your own self-love.
Mm-hmm.
So how are two people who are overflowing with love going to connect? Because how can you know what to give another person if you're not assuming that he lacks or she lacks? How are you going to know what to give? I mean, is it a point in life where you become comfortable enough with yourself that if you meet someone or something like that, you think that you're mature enough to enter into this relationship and deal with it for what it is, whatever that may be? Or it just seems to me to be some kind of conflict here. How can you determine what another person needs if you don't expect that person is lacking in something?
Well, the reality is that all of us are in need of something.
And
by
that's why you
definition of being
connect
on the
in the
planet.
first
That's
place.
why you connect on the first place. You have to understand something very profound here. We are all in a state of need. It is almost as if
Something.
I need something. That thing that I need, God has put in another human being. Please make a note. Please make a note. The thing you need is in another human being on this planet who will come in contact with you in this lifetime, who will move across your karmatic path. That's how it's designed. And that person has a need that is in another human being. Okay? So we find that just by virtue of existing on this planet, we are all in need. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this creation. At least not at this level. Now, the thing is this, that as you develop your talent, as you move deeper into Dharma, as this Dharma becomes manifest, or as it increases in its development, it is magnetic. You hear the term charisma? Charisma. There's a kind of charismatic energy that flows from a person that is close to their Dharma, that automatically attracts the person that is in need of that thing. It's like physics. Think of it like this. It's not an intellectual thing. For instance, you don't have to think about having a sexual attraction to the opposite sex. It's not an intellectual thing. You have to understand this, folks, that this calm, this sexual energy, this eros, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It's like physics. Every man has a sexual attraction to a woman. Now, that's just a fact. At a molecular level, it's energy. We're talking about energy here. We're talking about yin yang, okay? We're talking about, Shakti and Prakati. We're talking about the dualities here. It's just like in magnetism, how the positive and the negative, how they're just attraction. We all play with magnets when we were kids. You put two magnets and there's a natural attraction. It's like that. There's an energy attraction. It has nothing to do with your philosophizing. It's just there, right? And it pulls. It will be attraction between a woman and her son. There is a sexual flow of energy there. Now remember, I am not talking about sex in the Western sense. We're not talking about this pornographic concept. I'm talking about the physics of sex here. It's just a natural attraction. It's just built into the system. And they all move toward each other. So there's a gravitation going on. Okay. Now, just as that is true at the sexual level, and you can feel it when you're sexually attracted. You can feel it, right? In your body. Men feel it in certain parts of the body. Women tend to feel it over their entire body. Okay? But you can feel it. Nothing wrong with that. You manage it. You have to manage your sexual attraction to your daughter, or you will rape her. You're a beast. If you fall all the way into the beast, you'll behave like any other beast. A beast will have sex with his siblings, with his parent. It doesn't matter. There's no consciousness to manage it. And if your consciousness is so undeveloped and so low, then the beast part of you will take over. And you will find yourself incapable of resisting these sexual impulses. It's just a fact. Just as that attraction is there, at the level of the development of one's Dharma, you create that same kind of attraction. It'll pull. Haven't there been people that you just attracted to, not even at a sexual level? You see? Because that person's got something you need. You see? And remember, in the moment that need is fulfilled, very often the relationships end. See, you have to understand that these relationships that we come into, this is not based on romance. This is karma. This is karma. These are individuals that we have to come in contact with in a give and take relationship. But if we have over-romanticized these things, oh, this is my wife, we're going to live happily ever after and go to heaven, nonsense. Nonsense. That's an expectation we bring into it, that is the result of the culture's influence on us. This is karma.
I got another thing I want to say.
Ooh, I'm gonna have a lot to say.
Well, I want you to break it down for me.
Yeah,
That's why I'm
yes,
saying
yes.
it. Another thing, well, growing up in my age and time, oftentimes women were chosen. You didn't choose your man, you were chosen.
Yes.
Then you decided if you wanted that man, but you were picked.
Mm.
So, and it's pretty much still like that. I mean, anytime you meet a man who's married, he'll tell you at some point in time he knew he was going to marry that woman. Very few women say that about their husband.
Interesting. Why is that?
I don't know, but I got another thing I want to say.
Yes, that's good, women. I want you to think. Why don't you all have that experience? You should know the answer to this.
I don't know.
We don't know.
You don't know?
No.
I don't know. You get chosen.
All
And
right.
when you get chosen, see, you can't do a lot of abstract thinking about what you're going to give to somebody because you got to first figure out who you're going to end up with or who you're going to invest some time with. Then you narrow it in on that person because you just kind of floating. Okay, I'm not married right now, so I'm like floating. I don't know who I'm going to connect with.
Absolutely.
So I can't zero in.
Right, you can't. This is the whole point. You can't. The female energy is orientated in a receptive mode.
That's right.
By definition.
That's right.
So you will never have the experience.
Oh, okay.
Okay? You will never have the experience. To even come close to having the experience, you have to step outside of the very thing that makes you a woman.
Now, is that just the line that men say that you knew you was going to marry that woman?
Not a line at all.
How do you know?
It's a fact because you have to understand yin and yang.
And
Remember-
men fundamentally understand
Remember I said
that.
that these are energy. No, they don't understand it either.
But they know.
But that's their
But they
experience.
know. But they know.
their experience.
Okay.
Like you know that you don't have a sense of choice.
Uh-huh.
They know that they have a sense of choice.
Okay.
You see?
All right.
But they don't know
The
any more than
dynamics
that.
of it. Okay.
They don't understand any of the dynamics.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Dorothy.
A man told me about 20 years ago that women are the one who choose the men. So was he lying to me? Because he was saying that unless a man constantly rapes a woman or whatever, that this woman chooses this man because.
Of course, at a level.
I think we more
Okay.
accept the
I
man.
mean, I
than
think
choose
women
you.
do choose
I
in a
think
way.
at a certain level, you have attracted the man. Now, I don't know if you want to call that choosing,
Okay.
but you have certainly created the matching energy,
All right.
right? That that particular male energy hooks up with. It's really strange. I mean, we can understand this best in the area of physics or biology somewhere, because there we can see these attractions. You know, these attractions.
Because the more the older I got, I think that he was right in a way.
Yeah, well, naturally you set up the attraction. For instance, let's say if you, like in chemistry, if you have a certain valence, all right? Let's say you're one of the elements on the periodic chart, right? And you got a certain valence or what have you. And then another element has to have a certain, only those elements with an opposite charge will bond with you, right? Now, if I take a handful of elements and throw them, you know, into the same arena that you are in, only those elements will bond with you that have the corresponding valences. It's almost as if you're a piece of magnet, right? And I can throw paper, wood, and everything else on top of you. The only thing that will stick to you is another piece of metal because therein lies the attraction.
So it goes back to the comma.
Yes, karma. Energy. Karma is about energy, in fact. When we get into karma, we're going to get into the energy of it, the physics. Folks, this stuff is more like physics than it is philosophy. We're talking about energy and the behavior of energy. When we talk about consciousness, we're talking about energy. It's not, it has nothing to do with your little personalities and your little opinions and your dogmas. This is energy. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than your intellect. But to try to relate the physics of it all within the context of your question, you have to understand again this yang and yin. One force is centrifugal, one is centrifugal. One pulls in, one goes out, okay? The women are receptive, okay? The male is aggressive. I mean, the energy, one flows in, the other one flows out. That's all that this is about. Like breathing. When we talk about breathing, how you exhale and inhale, and again, this is a mimic of the yin yang. You see? So this male energy is constantly looking for something to go into. Men are always like that. Even sexually, if they don't have sex with you, they have sex with a cow, with anything. They're looking for something to put it in. It's their nature. You see? Right? And women are looking for somebody to put something in them. It's their nature. That's how it is. It's energy. So don't take it personal. It's not a reflection on you. It's just the way energy is. So again, Emma, let me put it like this. You will attract that. Let's say if you're useless, because the question was, why do useless people, attract each other? Well, if you're useless, right, that usually means that you are perpetrating some fraud. You're probably luring people, saying, oh, if you come to me, I'm going to give you all of this, baby. But really, it's a trap. So now here's a useless man who's looking for exactly all the things you telling him you'll do. And you connect just like that, right? And that is what happens. When you have all that ego mythology, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'll take care of you, I'm fair, I'll never leave you, I'll stay with you. This is exactly what some useless man is looking for. Those are the qualities that he expects to find in a woman. It doesn't mean that he's going to meet your expectation, but it is your lure, right? And so you're getting continuously that which fits in. There is no error. There are no mistakes in these things at all. I know you've been thinking, oh God, I made a mistake. No. There's no mistake. You are getting at all times, with no exception, exactly what you are putting out. With no exception. You are always getting that which you are attracted in your life. There is no way to violate the law. And I mean not only in these areas, across the entire spectrum. You are getting only as much money as you are capable of attracting. Period. That's the truth. People you attract, circumstances, all of that is a reflection of you. And if you want that to change, you have to change. That's why the mystics put their whole emphasis on you changing. They don't tell you grab a banner and go out here and change the world. That's what reformers do. You see, Buddha's never come and preached that. Buddha says, reform yourself. Mahavira says, reform yourself. Jesus said, reform yourself. Muhammad said, reform yourself. And your world will change. But it will not change until you do the work on the inside. So there's never been a time when you are in a relationship with somebody by error, and you just happen to find a bad person. You have gotten precisely what your karma has dictated. Precisely. The law of karma is just. You shall reap what you sow. Now the problem is that you may have asked for this kind of useless person when you were 16. Took nature a little while to give it to you. Took them about 15 years. But now at 30, you got that useless person you wanted at 16. And you've forgotten that that's what you wanted. You see, you've lost awareness that this is what you wanted. Have you ever looked at it? Most of us have always said in our life, boy, if I can just have this, I'll be happy. If I could just get that job. But then you get the job, in about 5 minutes, you're back to being miserable. But how is that? You got exactly what you said. If you had, you would be happy. You got it, and you're not happy. If I can just get this man. Ooh. And you got the man. And now you're just miserable. If I just can get this woman. You got the woman. Now you're miserable. You see? Why is that? You see? These are the things you have to understand. These are the things you have to understand.
Well, give us a hint.
Well, I want you first. I have to seduce you. This is foreplay, right? I have to get you in the mood.
Because there's so much truth in what you're saying. Because I'm sitting up here and I'm just bubbling inside because everything in which that you then. All relationships, fundamentally speaking, is from the very onset, is on the useless side.
Yes. All relationships that are not arising out of Dharma are by definition on the useless side.
And one has to grow
Right. That is the whole purpose of spiritual development. By definition, all of the relationships that you are in, as long as you are outside of Dharma, are by definition useless. Play no games with this. Have no illusion. Yes, brother. And let me just add to that. And no matter how much you try to produce satisfying relationships outside of Dharma, you will fail. You will simply fail. Because you are not in Dharma. Hence, the whole message of the mystics, follow the path of your Dharma, right? Discover your Dharma, discover yourself, right? But we all minimize that. With all these Buddhas, these Mahavirs, these Moseses, these men, women, they don't know what they're talking about. This is 1995. You understand? I got my thing together. I'm educated. I've read the books. I've watched Oprah. I know all this. I got experience, right? I don't have to get into no Dharma. You know what I mean? What is Dharma? I have no time for this nonsense. Spirituality. I didn't make me some money. You see what I'm saying? But you don't go nowhere. So you're absolutely right, Satra. The insight is absolutely right. We're born, by definition, we're entering into these relationships in a state of uselessness. Now the question is how to come in. Yes, brother.
May I share something? Because again, I'm angry because I wasn't here last week, and I had prepared for last week because I had did homework, which was amazing. No, I'm always talking about I'm in love with Marima Ani, and she was my animus. Is that animus? The female in me. And I got them wondering and pondering, well, how in the hell I get stuck with Shirley? Shirley, please forgive me. But the truth of the matter is that I made the most profound revelation. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I fell in love with this 17 or 18-year-old young lady. She was a cheerleader, and she had freckles. And I had never seen this kind of black person before. Yeah, and I fell instantly in love with her, okay? And it dawned on me. The first thing in which that attracted me to Shirley was her freckles. And I said, God, this is amazing. So I got the phenotype, but
All right, well, you're not going to go beyond that. You get your phenotype back. But it is very interesting how you saw that whole attraction came, right, from an experience rooted way back.
Way back.
8 years old somewhere.
Way back, yeah.
And it started at the level of phenotype. It's very interesting. As you go deeper and deeper into that, you will see many more things. Many more things. When one is able to go back into lifetimes prior to this lifetime, you begin to see really the basis of your relationships in this lifetime. So there's no way to just really have that knowledge as long as you're confined and limited to the data that is available to you through conscious recall of the events of a single lifetime. You have to look and see. Almost everybody you're in relationship with, you have been in relationship with these same people in some shape, form, or fashion for eons. Eons. It's a very profound thing. Some birth you were the parent. Some birth you were the son, the daughter. Some birth you were the wife. Some birth she was the husband. Some birth she was the employer, etc. It's been very different in each incarnation, but the journey continues. It's a very profound thing. It's a very profound thing. But I hope that one thing that these workshops, at least as they relate to these human relationships, have triggered in you, is a real sincere desire to get off the useless side of life. To recognize that you've been on the useless side. That's a difficult thing. Because our ego mythologies, right, are so out of whack that it's just really hard to acknowledge the fact that we have lived on the useless side. And we lived there so long we don't know what our Dharma is. We don't even know. All we ever known was what I want some other person to do for me. We have never thought, what is it that I can do for someone? Usually, a person that is in a state of self-contempt will have a lot of difficulty finding their dharma. Please make a note of that. A person themselves who are feeling fundamentally worthless can never even conceive of themselves contributing to another human being. Why? Because they feel worthless. And the deeper this feeling of worthlessness is, the more difficult it is for this person to come into Dharma. So I want you to be aware of that. You know, in spite of all of our high self-esteem and all these other things, when it comes down to this work, you will feel the realities. They will take over. And underneath all that high self-esteem is really fundamentally a feeling of worthlessness. I really can't contribute nothing to another person. I can give them $1, $2, you know, but that's it. A piece of bread, but I don't have nothing. Look at that. Are you so worthless that that's all you have is a piece of bread or a few dollars? Is your humanity so contracted and it's been so reduced that that's all you can do? That is a serious state of self-contempt. All the more important that we work on ourselves. All the more important that we work on ourselves. So before we go on and explore some of these other things, are there any thing that you need to know? Because I get the sense that we have not completed this homework of developing these lists of contributions. So is there anything that I can say that will help you? Because you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. Yes?
That, you know, how could I say it? The worthless person you just described. I think when you do that homework and you look at it and you say, what can you contribute, you end up being that way. Now, I mean, what can you really contribute besides, you know, as you say, the mundane things? You know, you can contribute that, but you can't really say honestly to yourself that, yeah, I can contribute love, I can contribute spirituality, I can contribute patience. You may be able to contribute all of those things sometime.
Future birth.
Yeah, you know, and you know, a couple of minutes, you were patient for 5 minutes, but I'm talking about, but that doesn't make you a patient person.
Yes.
So when you look at that and you're looking at your contributions, you almost have to say, well, you know, I don't have anything to contribute.
Right.
And I think, you know, upon doing that, I've come to that conclusion. I don't know if it's self-contempt. I've just faced it. I've come to the fact
You just
a
acknowledged.
while ago, yeah, that all those things, it goes back to what you were talking about a long time ago when I first discovered that I have virtue.
Okay.
It's the same thing. Then you see that in your relationship too.
Yes.
I mean, now you don't all of a sudden have virtues, so it comes right back to that. Okay.
Yes.
You don't have these things, so you look at yourself in a relationship and say, you know, well, I don't think I have anything to contribute there,
Yes.
but yet you're still in one.
Yes. I think, Father, you have got the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to go deep into it and to really discover, as a result of your honest reflection, that you are worthless and you have nothing to contribute to another. And that realization shocks you, triggers in you a desire, I'm going to become worthwhile. It motivates you now to move to Dharma. It motivates you to move to Dharma. It means that you have penetrated that ego, penetrated that mythology. You've gotten underneath and you really discovered, like the emperor, that you are really naked and you have no clothes. And you start covering up. You start getting about the business of doing whatever is necessary. Because it is a horrible realization to know that you have been moving on this planet for decades, just useless, just parasitic. You see? making no contribution to nobody, raising havoc and misery wherever you go. Yes, Lieutenant?
I was going to say that I've always had a sense of God. Like you talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I always felt like that in a relationship. I just took the mundane things for granted. I always knew I had a certain type of job, a certain type of income, so I just took that for granted. And it was the emotional and psychological and spiritual things that I can make a contribution to. And I feel like Sister Kiba, that with my insights in life, just from my own experience and with another human being, we put that together and we both can be better people. And like you were saying earlier, every person in this world has a need. I have a need. Everyone in this room has a need. And I think what I may have done was get the terminology for when you're expecting something from another person, you realize what your shortcomings are or what your needs are, and you see that in another person. And as a result of this class, nine weeks of this class, I realized that you can't rely on other people's for your needs, even though you may need it.
Absolutely.
You're talking
So,
about,
now,
the term is called projection.
Projecting, you project certain expectations and needs on other people.
Yes.
And it's good if you can get it, but if you can't get it, you just got to learn how to live with that.
Boy, I don't
So-
know if I can take this. These all these little things going on about that. You've added another one. This is good. Because again, you have hit upon another interesting thing. You've gone even deeper. Remember I said that there are depths that you go through, right?
I think about Martin Luther King when he said you got to know God for yourself. And that's the way this is. I mean, it's good if you can get it from somebody else. But ultimately, you got to stand before that bar.
Now let's look at this.
For
Now,
yourself.
Let's look at this. Now, look at your list of expectations. Slide them up in your mind or put them in front of you. Look on those lists of expectations. Are those really needs?
No.
Huh?
No.
Look good.
No.
Look good. Are they really needs or are they desires? There's a distinction. You fail to fulfill a need, you will perish. Life will cease. Water is a need. Try to go without it and see what happens. Food is a need. Are the things on your list needs? So let's be clear about these distinctions between desires and needs. Look at your list carefully. What's on your list really constitutes a need? I'm waiting.
It's just a need for your ego mentality. Outside of your ego mentality, there's really no need for these things.
It's a false need, isn't it?
It's a false need.
But you're having the perception that it's a real need.
It's not a real.
And like a Pavlovian dog, you react, right? Because the mind is perceiving it as the real need, and you will react to the absence of those things on the list as if they were real. For instance, well, yes, love is a need. I'm saying, look on your list. I don't want you to scratch off things that are legitimate there, but I want you to narrow it down. Get that stuff off your list that is not real, right? And to look at it from a different perspective. How many things on that list can you provide for yourself? And sometimes you say, I need a person that I can trust. All right? Person must be trustworthy. Why? Really? Why?
To enhance our own insecurity.
Because you can't trust. You don't trust. You can't trust. So you need somebody to be trustworthy for you. If you're looking for somebody to be trustworthy, that's a projection. It simply means you need to become trustworthy yourself. Because you know that I need somebody around me who is trustworthy, because someone that is truthful. Yeah, you want that. But why? Because you're a liar. Fundamentally, you can't live in the truth. And so you need someone connected with you that has that capacity.
Then you ain't gonna get along with them.
No, because your natures are fundamentally opposite. The more they tell the truth, the angrier you get.
Absolutely.
You got the person that you wanted that could tell the truth, but now you can't stand to hear the truth because it goes against your ego mythology. Now you upset. I got to get rid of this person. And the charge is strange. Now you accuse the person of being untruthful. Strange. It's madness. It will drive you nuts. Usually the things, as Lieutenant pointed out, that you projected onto that other person in the form of your expectation are really the areas that you need to work on in yourself. Why do you need somebody to validate you? You only need somebody to validate you when you're in a state of self-contempt and cannot validate yourself. You have no felt sense of worth. And therefore you need somebody to continuously validate you. Isn't that the truth? These things have to be looked at very, very carefully. But Lieutenant, you have had a good insight.
That's why with your mate, if they got some insights, you put them all together and just think of all the insights you'll have.
That's right. We'll have an insight center. You know, it's interesting because the original organization that we formed years ago was called the Insight Center. Actually, the House of Pride, in its corporate form, listed with the state of Illinois, is the Insight Center. Doing, you know, DBA, aka House of Pride. So we come all the way full circle. But I mean, this is very, very important that we understand these things. How much of what you're looking for in a human, in another human being, are the things that you have to do for self. How much of that? Remember I said that normally in most relationships they come together, person A meets person B. Now person A is lonely, miserable, inadequate, projects, hallucinates about person B. Person B is lonely, dejected, etc. They come together and they expect this to equal happiness. Two lonely people will not make a happy couple. Yes, Lieutenant?
I was just going to say, it's so obvious, you know, when you're dealing with useless people. I just can tell when I'm at work. Like I listen to Pam, I listen to Sister Key, where they talk about spiritual things. You can tell where a person's head is at. And you'll meet people out there, and that's all they talk about is their bills. You can pretty much see where this is going to go. And I can tell they ain't looking for no man to do nothing for them. Not take care of their bill. But I mean, you run into people across in the streets, and they, you know, that's the whole conversation is about their bills, about this, about the mundane thing. See, I haven't heard them talk about that. So you can pretty much see where their head is at.
Yes.
You know, with the insight of this class.
Yes.
So it's a degree of uselessness.
There are degrees of uselessness.
Yes.
Another
So,
great insight. There's degrees of uselessness. Totally useless, minimally useless. You see, very useless. No,
exactly.
there are degrees.
You can tell this in a person's conversation.
Of course, you can tell exactly, and just a person's movement. I mean, when you start really getting the hang of this, you will develop what we call a sixth sense. Your intuition will open. You'll be able to communicate at the intuitive level. It's so much superior, you know, because you're not dependent on any testimony coming from that person. You just can intuitively feel it. You see. So it's very interesting. Now, so if you combine just these two insights, the insights of Lieutenant and the insights of Baba, and we get a working foundation. One is that Baba has said you will come to the realization if you really do this exercise real. And look on your list of contribution and see all those nice things you put on there. I can contribute love, blah, 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 blah. And when you go really deep into it, you find, oh my God, I don't possess none of these things. How am I going to contribute that which I don't have? I can contribute love in a relationship, but you don't have no love for nobody. You've been so totally useless. You've never developed the capacity to love anybody. And you've been confusing love, you see, with something else, right? And Bible says that when you go deep into this thing, you discover, my God, worthless. That's a turning point. Something can happen here. If you mismanage the realization that you're worthless, you'll go head down into a sea of depression. You'll never return. It's a critical point. It could be breakdown or breakthrough from this point. If it's a breakthrough, you immediately start moving towards God. You see? If it's a breakdown, you're gone. You see? Because it's too much. It's an overwhelming experience. Baba said it was 3 years ago, Baba, that you discovered, and 3 years later you still remember this thing, huh? Right? Wasn't such a small thing. It was a tremendous shock. It's a shock to anybody that has that revelation for the first time. You see? So Baba's insight, you know, if properly managed, will move you seriously now toward Dharma. And then Lieutenant insight, as far as these expectations, you begin to find out that, my God, I've been in this relationship like a beggar. Just begging. Would you please give me this? Would you? Not realizing that all that I'm begging for I have in myself. It's available. I just have to get this in myself. And when I get all these things in myself, then I cease to be a beggar. I'm in the relationship as a king, as a giver. You understand the difference? The transformation of a beggar into a king. It's amazing. But that you realize when you look at this so-called list of your expectations and really look at what these things really are. And how many of these things are things that one needs to provide to oneself. Yes, sir?
I want to say two things. I want to say one thing about worthless and one thing about love or contribution. One thing about uselessness, people should not get depressed over this, because the way you're talking now, somebody, depending on what mood they're in, it can be very depressed.
Yes.
There's a way out of uselessness by separating what's going on to you and understanding that you still have value as
Absolutely.
a human being, okay?
Very important.
And that is very important
Very
because,
important.
you know, that makes you go up
That's right.
out of
That makes you go up out of you. And let's emphasize that good, because it did say it's a critical discovery.
Yeah.
And if you misunderstand the insight, you will plunge. And we don't want anybody to misunderstand the
don't.
point. I have said from time that we started this class that all of us, with no exception, by virtue of the fact that we exist, have worth and value. You just don't know what it is. But there's no question that you have it, irrespective of your faults, your shortcomings, and your imperfections. Your worth and value as a human being is a priori, it is unconditional, it is not debatable, and there is no question about it. But like Bahika said, the poet, that all are rich o Bahika, but how to untie the knot. You know how Big Mama used to put the money in the handkerchief, tie it in a knot, and send you to the store, and how you get to the store and sometimes you couldn't get that knot untied, Brother Siddiqui, right? It was too tight. Bahika says that we all have money in these handkerchiefs that have been tied with this knot, and how to untie the knot we do not know. Therefore, we remain a pauper. We don't have access to that which is valuable in us. But you're right. Emma is absolutely right, and I thank you for adding that qualifier here, so that no one should leave here with the impression that this state of worthlessness that you really will discover you in is your natural state and it's permanent. It's just that you have to have that realization to shock you now and to really develop in this unique quality in yourself and then move towards your Dharma. Right? What Lieutenant says is that you move out of this worthlessness and you change and alter that whole expected type of relationship. And you'll start giving these things to yourself. You'll start giving them to yourself. Right? They don't have to validate you. You can validate yourself. You're straight. If they validate you, fine. If they don't validate you, fine. Your emotional experience does not rise and fall with the behavior of these people. You become centered. You're now in the world, but not of the world. Please make a note of that. That's what the spiritual path is all about. It is to give you the capacity to be in the world, but not of this world. And sometimes we meet these people. I remember the first time, Sister Kiva, I read Bhagavad Gita, and I read about the great episode of the Mahabharata and Lord Krishna. And this Lord Krishna was so fantastic. I couldn't believe such a person existed. It is always difficult we read about it, Jesus, now it's hard to believe, ooh, no such person could have existed. Nobody could have been that loving. Hard to believe that there was human beings like a Jesus or Krishna or Buddha or Mahavira or Sajio Baba or Mirabah. Hard. But they were those spiritual beings that were in this world, but not of this world. That's the heritage that we all have. All of us have in us the same thing that a Buddha has, with no exception. The only difference, Buddha developed his. Jesus developed his. Muhammad, Mahavira, Sajio, Mira, they developed. We can develop too. But as Baba said, the first thing we have to do, we have to give up this self-deceit. We got to give up this self-deception and this fear. And we got to do our dharma. You see, it has to be given up. The whole function of a guru is just pound you over your head until he cracks it. That's the function of a guru. No other function. His job is done. Her job is done once they crack your ego. Done. The rest will happen naturally. You see? But we got such thick heads. Our egos are so thick, the gurus have to keep hitting us over the head over and over and over until they crack through that hard, rock-like ego of ours so that we can really see our true spiritual life. And out of that perception, as Baba said, something very different happens to you. You're no more the same. You're no more the same, you see. Yes, every now and then you may veer off the path, but you always come back. You know, there's something that now, you know, sets limits on your strays. Yes, sister?
I just like to say that what I have found personally, and he's so very true, that he has had great insight and seeing that some of us have discovered that we can provide some of these things for ourselves. But what I have discovered is that people often perceive it as, and I guess because they're somewhere else in their development, see it as arrogance and coming from me.
Yeah.
And so I'm presently trying to develop a high degree of humility so that people will not see it as arrogance, because they see it then as you not needing anything that you can provide for yourself. You don't need a friend, you don't need, you know, and personally it has provided a state of loneliness for me.
Yes.
And so I just took it back in and said, well, it's the way I'm projecting it. So I'm praying for humility so that people will not see it as that I don't need, although I can provide these things, some of these things for myself, I still need that external relationship.
Yes, you do. I think Sadra was going there earlier, and before we went off on some of the other topics, when it's pointing out that Bhagwan, love is on my list. That's how you I want you to understand that on your list there are some things that you really do need. I'm asking you to look at the list. You're right. You got some of this stuff right. You really did put down some things you really do need. But you put down a lot of stuff, you see, that you can get for yourself. And I'm simply saying now, edit it. But there are needs. I said earlier that we all are born with needs, and needs that we can fulfill, that can only come through another human being. That is what makes us so interdependent upon each other. I mean, this Creator has done something very marvelous. You see, He has hidden my needs in another human being. And He has hidden your needs in another human being. So He has made us indispensable to each other. You see? He's made us indispensable. And the more you are in touch with your need now, the more powerful of a receptive you become, don't you? And so that person that has your need, and they're aware of what their dharma is, and you're aware of what your needs are, you will meet. And no problem. And when you meet, something magic happens. You become creative. It's like the sperm and the egg. You know, back to the same fundamental analogy. Life happens now. Now something creative can come out of this union. The need has that combination, that union, it can give birth to something miraculous. But when two useless people come together, they give a sort of birth too, don't they? But they give birth to misery, right? So it's a negative creation, right? Through them, a little bit more hell breaks loose in the world. All that is wrong in this world, all the crime and all of the things that we all read about in the paper and just have all kinds of horrible reactions to, it comes from these useless people. And remember, we too are part of that useless crowd. We don't want to get too high on our pedestals. Remember what Baba said, you useless too. Now the question is, as Emma said, you don't have to remain useless. That there's been something put in you that makes you not less valuable than the stars. Critical. It was said about Jesus that he had attained such a high level of honor, usefulness, worthless, that he had become like one of the elements of nature, and that upon his exit from the creation, that flowers never have been able to attain the degree of blooming that was available to them at his birth. That birds don't sing as pretty after Jesus as they did during Jesus' time. You see? I mean, these are very beautiful metaphors that describes these mystics, that they become like moonlight on a dark night. They become like a cool breeze on a hot day. You see? The question is, when you are gone, life will probably get better. You see? Right? Birds will sing more sharper. You know, flowers bloom, bigger foliage on trees, fruit. That, you know, everything will get back to right. Because you just been useless. So we want to really give some serious consideration to that. I know that I could stand here and we could do another 20 workshops on this subject, and believe me, I will not exhaust it. That's how much stuff it is out there. But time obviously will not permit that. But these last couple of workshops, I really have tried to instill in you a real desire. If I can just trigger a desire in you, you see, to really move into your Dharma, then I have done something that is worthwhile. Otherwise, I've simply been useless. And I have to go to work on my own uselessness. So let's take a break, let's resume, and we'll continue afterwards. Let's come back at approximately 2 o'clock.